welcome to Storytime with Chris. Today, I have just a couple of topics that I want to touch on regarding the 49ers, and those two topics are, I'll be going over the preseason, game 2, and discussing my thoughts on the game, some things that stood out, some roster decisions that I believe are the best, and then the main topic of today will be, what does Kyle Shanahan have to do? What does he have to improve on in order to get over the hump, to finally win a Super Bowl? So that is what we will be going over during this episode. At this point, there's no new Ayuk or Trent Williams updates. So unless there's some breaking news by the end of the day, that's it. That's all I'm gonna say for now. So anyway, nothing going on with local sports at the moment, at least nothing that I've looked at. So let's get into it. Starting off. Oh, and if I've mentioned this before, I record these episodes a few days before Saturday, which is when it's released. So, usually I try to get everything recorded by Thursday night, Friday morning, so that there are no hiccups, because I have a second job on Saturdays that goes all day long. And yeah, it just makes it a little bit easier for me. So if there is any breaking news updates on Trent Williams or Brandon Ayuk, that will be next. If not, let's get into this preseason game 2 breakdown. Okay, so last weekend, the Niners played against the Saints in their second preseason game, and I'm not going to be doing a deep dive into this game. I'm just going to give a few brief points that stood out to me that I want to talk about. I didn't catch every single play because I was watching it on the old school TV antenna, so I couldn't rewind or go back or anything like that. So I have seen a few breakdowns since the game, but a lot of those breakdowns actually don't cover the second half. So these are just a few of my thoughts, some things that stood out to me, starting with Brock Purdy. So Brock Purdy played in the preseason game, and that's not an issue for me. Patrick Mahomes played in his preseason game as well, but the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy in the preseason is that Mahomes still had quite a few of his starters out there, including, Travis Kelce, who's a little bit older, and Brock went out there with I think a couple of starting offensive linemen, the fourth string running back, and then a bunch of receivers trying to make the roster. So yeah, that's it's one thing if Brock wants to play in that game, and I do put it a little bit on Brock, but Kyle Shanahan said they felt confident in Brock going out there with those guys, and then Brock was out there running around trying to survive. So I don't know. I feel like if Shanahan is going to let Brock go out there, he should have at least, there were some offensive linemen that were injured, so not much they could have done there, but they could have at least tried to get some receivers in there for him, or, maybe a better running back, because that was rough, and it really would have sucked if Brock Purdy got injured in that game. So I guess Shanahan has said that the starters should expect to play about a half of football this week, although it depends on how many plays they get. That's kind of how they do it. They want to reach a certain play count before they start pulling guys out. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting to see if Kubiak is calling the plays in that game as well. And because, obviously the Niners aren't going to give up their usual play calling in the preseason. They're going to save their best for the regular season. So yeah, glad Brock Purdy didn't get hurt. Hopefully the offensive line can protect him in this game, and he actually goes out there with some starters who can get open and actually, or even, just if the Niners could just cut Trent Taylor right now, that would be great. This is one of my points. Trent Taylor is just the most mid wide receiver in the league. The only thing he brings to this 49ers team is a little insurance when it comes to punt returns and kick returns. He's very sure-handed with that. I don't think it's enough. Well, I personally don't believe that is why he should make this roster. So when it comes to actually playing wide receiver, he is just mid. He couldn't get open, and just please cut him as soon as you can. One guy who played really well at the receiver position, this is his first action. He has been injured for a lot of training camp, and so seeing him out in the game was actually really cool. Jacob Cowing, he is fast. I think he's the fastest player on the offense. It's either him or I think Isaac Orendo, who I guess who knows what's going to happen with him. Jacob Cowing looks really good. He caught a deep ball on the sideline from Josh Dobbs, where if Dobbs gets it out in front of him, it's probably a touchdown, but he made a good adjustment, got his feet in bounds, and made a nice sideline catch. He had a few end arounds, a few screen passes, and he just looked really solid. A little bit of a smaller guy, but man, he looks like he's just a weapon. And besides Debo, I've wanted the Niners to go out and get a guy like this, especially if he can also be a deep threat. Deep threat slot guy. He's going to be fun to watch. So I'd love to see Brock Purdy throw into him a little bit in this upcoming preseason game. If any of the, I know Jawan Jennings has been injured, and I'm sure Debo's not going to go the whole game or as long as Purdy. I guess we'll see. So yeah, Jacob Cowing is legit. I think he's a lock to make this roster. One guy who's kind of on the, he's trying to fight for a spot, and I thought he looked really good in the second preseason game, was Matt Breida. Breida still has some wheels. He looked pretty fast, and the thing that I struggle with is he is fast, and he's been in the system. We know, what he looked like before. I'm sure he's a little bit older. He might not be as fast as he used to be, but if it came down to it, I think him and, what was that running back? What's his name? 38. Why am I forgetting his name? Hold on. Schrader. I mean, we haven't seen a lot from Schrader. There's a lot of hype around him in training camp, so who knows? That might be a guy possibly be snuck onto the practice squad. I mean, Breida and Schrader might be practice squad guys. I don't think you're going to be completely heartbroken if one of them is picked up by another team, so I guess we'll see what happens there. Either way, having either of those guys as your fourth option is pretty remarkable. It really speaks to the depth of this running back room, which I talked about last week. I believe this running back room is one of the strengths of this team this year. It's one of the top 3 strengths. Another couple of guys who I want to see make this team are Curtis Robinson and Tatum Bethune. They're solid young linebackers. I thought they looked really good. And honestly, if it comes down to it and you have to pick between, an older linebacker who, may be a little bit more experienced, but we know what they can bring. I don't want to see Demetrius Flanagan fouls. Just get out of here. I'd rather see these two guys make the squad than a guy like him, just because they have really high potential. They flashed in the preseason in real game action, and they're younger. I mean, they're going to have a little bit more longevity than an older player. So I really hope that they can find a spot for these two guys, even if they're just special teams players. I really hope they make the final roster. And then finally, Josh Dobbs, I think, should be the quarterback too. He looked really good in the second game. He's a guy where, he's not the most talented arm-wise, but he makes good decisions for the most part, and he can also improvise and make plays with his legs. I mean, we saw a play where he went completely across the field and got a first down, and he just provides, as far as a quarterback too, I think that's really important to have. Purdy is definitely more of a pocket passer, but he can scramble. He can go out and improvise and make plays, with his legs, even if it's getting out of the pocket, making the guy miss, throwing downfield, whatever. So having a quarterback too, who may not be the most talented pocket passer, having him be a guy that can go out, scramble, get first downs with his legs, I think that's really key. Because if you have a quarterback too that has to play multiple games, it's not going to look as good as Brock Purdy. And I think Josh Dobbs would fill that role the best. And again, when it comes to quarterback 3, I'd rather go with a young guy like Tanner Mordecai. We saw how that worked out with Brock Purdy. I'm not saying Mordecai is Brock, but if you're on your third string quarterback, your season's most likely over at that point. I don't care who your third string quarterback is. I would rather go with a young guy who you can develop and get some real-time action rather than a guy like Brandon Allen. Again, I think either of those two guys, if they're on the practice squad and another team picks them up, it's not going to be the end of the world. But yeah, I'd rather see Mordecai get that spot than Brandon Allen. And that's about it. That's everything I have to talk about as far as the second preseason game. So let me know what you think. And the third preseason game is tonight against the Raiders. We'll see if I'm able to catch any of that game. If not, I'll just have to look at some of the breakdowns later. Really like Johnny Dell's Football Academy. He does an excellent job breaking down the film, explaining things at a higher level. And then JT O'Sullivan, Quarterback School, he does a good job breaking down quarterbacks. So that's it. We'll see how this game goes tonight, and I'll probably share my thoughts on that next week. Okay, the main topic of today's episode. What does Kyle Shanahan need to improve on this season for this team to finally win a Super Bowl? I have a couple of points here. A couple of them are intertwined, and they're not in any particular order, but these are some things that I would like to see Kyle Shanahan, I misspelled his name, Kyle Shanahan improve on this season. And the first one, which isn't interesting, I've talked about before, so it's a little bit different. Might not be what you expect, but I would like to see Kyle Shanahan override Christian McCaffrey. Last year, CMC CMC, of course, he was the offensive player of the year. He was almost the league MVP, which is pretty amazing for a running back. And the thing is, I love McCaffrey. He is awesome and obviously one of the best football players in the league, the best running back in the league. It's crazy that the 49ers have him. But last year, I think he got a little bit greedy, a little bit selfish by waving other guys off. And maybe he realized that he was in the running for MVP and offensive player of the year. And I think that ended up hurting him in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. By the end of the year, in the playoffs, I just remember seeing him, he either had a wrap on his leg or he was getting it massaged constantly. There were a few times where he was limping and he just didn't seem 100% in the playoffs. So this year, I want to see Shanahan override him, which, he's the head coach. He shouldn't have to override him, and use a mixture of running backs. And this running back room is so deep. I've talked about this before, between Christian McCaffrey, offensive player of the year, great at running the ball, great at passing the ball. I mean, if you want to run trick plays, he can do that. We saw that in his second game as a 49er against the Rams. So yeah, he can do everything. So yeah, of course he's going to be running back one. Give him the most carries. I'm not saying give him 50% of the carries. I'm saying pull him out a little bit more, because you have Jordan Mason behind him, who is the best backup running back in the league. In my opinion, he might be a starter for 20 other teams. I don't know. I'm just throwing that number out there. He might even be a starter for more teams than that. But you've got him. He's a good running back. He's a power runner. He's been working on his catching ability this offseason. So we'll see if that translates into the actual games. And then you have third running back, which is Elijah Mitchell, which is he's a really solid running back to have. It seems like every time he gets the ball, he's going for 5 yards or more. So, he's been in this offense for a long time. He is established, and having him as a third running back is going to be awesome. So having this three-headed monster, I think what you can do is, to keep these guys fresh, you don't have to play all of them in the game. You can have Christian McCaffrey, tell the running backs, look, CMC is the running back one. However, Jordan, you're going to be going in, you're going to be rotating in during this game. And then Elijah, if we need you, we'll rotate you in as well. However, we'd like to save you for next week. And then having this rotation of running backs where you can keep them all fresh, keep them all healthy, hopefully. We'll see how that goes. Christian McCaffrey already is dealing with a calf injury, so that's not good. And that further drives my point that I think Shanahan needs to override him, rotate him out a little bit more, so that come playoff time, he is ready to go. Okay, second thing, and this is something that would have happened during the offseason, so we'll see if it happened. It's not something you're going to do during the season. At least I don't think you are. And that is to develop a better drop back passing game. If you watch the quarterback school with JT O'Sullivan, you'll know that he is not a fan of the 49ers drop back passing game. He breaks it down a little bit further than I can, but essentially what he says is a lot of these concepts are very basic. And honestly, they're similar to stuff that I ran in high school, where they're not the most quarterback friendly, and it really limits your options and provides an edge to the defense. Because when you have, if you're running a smash, this is what I don't understand. You have a smash route and you run it to both sides. So a smash route, you have a hitch. Your two wide receivers on the outside run hitches, and then your your slot receiver or your tight end run corners. You have that concept, and you mirror it on both sides of the field. Your quarterback has to pick one side, and essentially that gives them two options with maybe a check down from the running back. Versus if you come in with a more complex passing system where you run smash to one side, and then you have your two left receivers run a concept that complements the smash, so that if the hitch isn't there, the corner isn't there, the check down isn't there, is there a fourth guy coming across the field? Instead of limiting yourself to three options, you have more. At that point, you're probably running or getting sacked or throwing the ball away anyway. But I would just like to see a better drop back passing game, especially and I'm going to go into this a little bit more, but in the 2-minute system, you need to be able to drop back and pass. If there's 2 minutes or even less in the half, in the game, you're not going to be running your offense or your scheme where one play sets up the next. It just doesn't work. The defense knows you're going to pass. They know you want to go to the sidelines, and so you got to develop some concepts to improve your drop back passing game. So that's another thing. The next thing I'd like to see Kyle Shanahan improve upon is empowering Brock. It seems like in years past, the 49ers quarterbacks have had really a lot of limitations when it comes to calling audibles, hot hot routes, changing plays up. So I'd like to see Kyle Shanahan give Brock a little bit more, give him more power on the field, allowing him to change plays if he sees, something in the defense. Call hot routes. I mean, Devontae and Aaron Rodgers had this amazing connection where they can look at each other and Aaron takes 2 steps back, throws it up to Devontae. I don't think that the Niners would necessarily get to that level, but if for some reason a corner is playing 10 yards off of Debo and Brock sees that, he could quickly, signal to Debo like, hey, just turn around and I'm going to throw you the ball right there. I mean, I give the ball to Debo with 10 yards of, with a guy 10 yards away anytime. I doubt any defense will play like that because defenses know play a little bit closer with Debo. They know he struggles with press coverage, but I would like to see that, giving Brock also the ability to change up protections if he needs to. And that goes back to the drop back passing game. What if he has some pass concept that's mirrored on both sides of the ball and he needs his tight end to shift to the other side to help block because there's a blitz coming. I would just like to see, give Brock some more power, allow him to really control the offense at the end of the day. And also giving Brock better blitz beaters, giving him solutions when, there's a blitz, we got to throw it hot. They don't have a lot of good hot route options or a lot of hot reads when it comes to blitzing. And that's something else that I've picked up from watching JT O'Sullivan break down the 49ers offense. So that's another thing I'd like to see him work on. Another thing, and this one I think that they have already improved upon this offseason, and that is keeping their foot on the gas and being more aggressive on 4th downs. I think these two things go hand in hand. And I think part of the reason why Brandon Staley was brought onto the team, you have 2 very different ends of the spectrum where Kyle Shanahan is more conservative. He's gonna, he's not gonna go for it most of the time. And then Brandon Staley is a little too aggressive, going for it a little bit too much on 4th down. And I think Kyle might lean on Brandon a little bit more and say, hey, well, what do the analytics say we should do here? What, blah, blah, blah. What kind of play should we run? And things like that. Sometimes I think Kyle overthinks the kind of plays that he calls on 4th down. I mean, a lot of times it seems like they work, but there are some 4th down plays where as soon as the play begins, I'm like, oh, why is this the play call? And then they barely squeak out the 4th down, or if a defense makes one correct read and then the play gets blown up, whatever. So I think that's another thing. And also keeping their foot on the gas. Kyle Shanahan is kind of notorious for getting big leads and then allowing the team to come back because he just wants to run the ball, or he just gets super conservative with their play calling. So I'd like to see them really, push the knife in a little bit more when the game seems like it's over, and just keep your foot on the gas. Your goal should be, I don't know, to break the Denver Broncos offense record. And they scored, how many points per game did they average that year with Peyton Manning? It was like 40 points. It was insane how many points they put up. And I doubt the Niners will ever get there, but that's a good goal to have. Score the most points in franchise history. I think that's a good offensive goal. And one way I think they can do that, which is another way that Shanahan can improve, is by using George Kittle more in the passing game. George Kittle is one of my favorite players on the team, and the fact that they only got him the ball twice in the Super Bowl is just, I know he got hurt at the very end, but they could have used him a lot more in the beginning rather than having him in for blocking. And that's just what I would like to see. I'd like to see him do more than just blocking, because he is a really, really good tight end. And I truly believe that if he and Travis Kelce switched places, George Kittle would be even more productive than Kelce. So that's another thing. Just incorporate George Kittle a little bit more into the game plan. Incorporate Kyle Juszczyk into the game plan a little bit more. He's the highest paid fullback in the NFL. Give him the ball a little bit rather than just making right now he's like the highest paid blocker in the league, essentially. That's not a lineman. He's just a high level blocker. Gets paid lots of money. Get him the ball. He's super talented. Get creative. All right. I just have 2 more things that I really want to talk about. This next point, it's just weird to me. But it was, I think Kurt Bankert said that the 49ers don't even practice 2-minute offense. And that's just crazy to me. They don't even practice it. They just kind of, I don't know if they just go over it like, all right, if we're in 2-minute offense, this is what we're going to do. We don't need to walk through it. We're just going to do it. So that's interesting. I think they could be a little bit smoother on their 2-minute offense, honestly. I mean, it seems like they always get close, but it would be nice to see them score touchdowns on every one of those situations. I know that's not likely, but just at least practice it. Or also they don't practice practice wet ball drills. So if the weather is going to be stormy on Sunday, like in Cleveland or in Chicago, well, you don't practice to get the concepts perfect, or you've got to practice like if the ball is going to be wet, which, you can go out and slice and dice the defense with a dry ball in practice. But the moment you get the ball wet, it's going to be different. And I think you have to really rep that as well. Because on game day, if the ball is wet, it doesn't matter how smooth your offense ran during practice. It's tough to throw and catch wet balls. So that's another thing, is just practice real game situations. Don't just conceptualize them. Actually go out with the team and practice them. And this very last point, it kind of goes along with developing a better passing game and empowering Brock. But I think Kyle should not abandon his play calling system, but I think he should be able to step outside of it. It seems like good teams are figuring out the 49ers offense a little bit more and more. I mean, we saw it last year. Cleveland, even Minnesota figured it out a little bit. Who else? The Ravens, Kansas City, and in the playoffs, the Packers played it really tough with the Niners for a while, and their defense wasn't amazing. Detroit's defense was a little bit better, and they figured it out too. So I think Kyle needs to really get a little bit more creative, and that goes along with developing a better drop back passing game. If you incorporate that, maybe just get creative with the personnel. I know Shanahan is already pretty creative and good at that stuff, but I think he could be even better, and stepping outside the system. So all of a sudden you have this system that might be becoming a little bit more predictable. All of a sudden you come out and do something completely different. And I'd like to see this happen against the Chiefs, because Steve Spagnuolo has Kyle Shanahan's number. He always succeeds against Shanahan. So when you go against a defense like that is successful against your system, you need to have answers. You need to be able to get creative and step outside of that, even if it's just for a game at a time. And yeah, that's about it. I know that's a lot to ask for Kyle Shanahan to improve on this year. I'll summarize. I believe Kyle Shanahan this season needs to work on overriding CMC and using more of a mix of his running back room. Needs to develop a better drop back passing game. Needs to work on empowering Brock, allowing him to have a little bit more control of the offense, keeping his foot on the gas and being more aggressive on fourth downs. Use George Kittle more in the passing game. Actually practice 2-minute offense and real game situations like wet ball drills, and he needs to be able to step outside of his system. And I know that he's most likely not going to improve on all of those things, but I think if he can improve on 3 or 4 of those things, and some of them are completely in his control, some of them are not, some are definitely easier said than done. The easiest, I think, is telling McCaffrey that he needs to step out and let Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell take some more snaps. That's probably the easiest out of all of these. But I think if Shanahan can improve a little bit more, I believe enough in Brock and this offense, and I think this defense is going to be really good again this year. I think that's going to give him the best shot to finally get over the hump and win a Super Bowl. So let me know what you think. I've always been someone that's highly critical of Kyle Shanahan. People label him as an offensive genius and the greatest play caller in the NFL besides Andy Reid, and I think he is very smart. He is really good. His offense puts up a lot of numbers. He can do it with multiple different guys and quarterbacks. So I'd like to see him be able to finally take that last step and win a Super Bowl. So let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with the points that I made? What do you think Kyle Shanahan needs to work on if I didn't list it? Or, are there any counter arguments to any of the things that I said? Let me know what you think, because I'm critical of Shanahan. I think he needs to change some things in order to finally get a Super Bowl, and he's capable of doing it. He just needs to go out there and actually do it. That will do it for this week's episode. Thank you for everyone who listened today. Let me know what you think about my thoughts on Kyle Shanahan and what he needs to improve on this year, and my assessment of the 49ers' second preseason game. I wanted to do an episode where I predict the final roster for the Niners, but I'm just not going to have time to do that. So what I think I'll do instead is I'll probably react to the depth charts. I'll go, player or position by position, and, just state what I believe, my thoughts on it. Because I know some guys that I definitely want to keep and some guys I definitely want to let go. Cough, cough, Trent Taylor. So yeah, that'll be it for today. At this point, nothing has broken regarding Brandon Ayuk or Trent Williams. So I'm recording this outro on Friday. It'll be 4 p.m. Mountain Time. So yeah, if there is any Brandon Ayuk news or Trent Williams news, it's probably not going to be in this outro. I'll just have to record a little segment of it early in the episode, like I mentioned before. So if there's not much of a reaction here at the end, then that's probably why. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Storytime with Chris is available on YouTube and Spotify. So I appreciate every follow, comment, I already said that, subscription, all that stuff. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and do those things. Let me know what you think. And yeah, this has been another Sports Saturday. Thanks again for listening. This has been Storytime with Chris.